Remind me of that? Somebody? Anybody? All right, I've got it. All right, so welcome to week 3. This is Zoom session 3. We have of course, our next session is going to be our face-to-face weekend, and that is March the 2nd and the 3rd. We'll start at 8:30 on March the 2nd, that Saturday, and then we will finish hopefully about 3:30, and then Sunday, and what we'll do is we'll kind of maybe plan on about a 45-minute lunch, and then we will be there Sunday. We'll start at 8:30 and try to be out there by noon. We'll have our colleagues will be in the class next to us. We may actually have a different classroom. One of the things that we asked the Fayetteville Christian School if they had a different room that had tables instead of desks. I don't know about you, but the desks, it didn't look as comfortable. I didn't sit them all day. I sat on the desk, but we'll try to. They may or may not have something different for us. So when you get there, they'll be assigned the door. I'll meet you at the door. And I plan to get there about 8 o'clock or 8:10 if you all want to get there thereafter. So that is our next session. So we don't meet again until March the 2nd. So it's 2 weeks off. Wow. You guys will be able to do a lot of work by then.
Right here.
Right? Okay. All right. So let's get started. We have a lot to do tonight. Let me go ahead and share my screen. You should be able to see this. I'm going to 700. You will notice that I put an announcement here for you. The dean of the School of Education is having a Meet the Dean or State of the Schools address. That is next Wednesday night on the 20th at 7 o'clock. That Zoom link is in there for you in case you would like to join that. You've met the dean. He's quite interesting man. Very intelligent, but he wants to kind of give you a state of the schools address. So first time we've ever had that, and I appreciate the zeal of Dean Bull. He's quite a gentleman to work with. But that is coming up on March, and you should see that. I'm sorry, February the 20th at 7 o'clock. So I want to bring you back to Blackboard. Thank you all for being here. We are on Zoom session 3, February the 12th. Our next meeting is the face-to-face, March the 2nd and 3rd. And after that, we have 4 more Zoom sessions, 1 more face-to-face. A little bit of prepping you for what we're going to do on our face-to-face session in March. Again, there's nothing you need to do to prep to come to it other than just be there and be ready, have your materials as well as have your laptop or your device with you, because we're going to do some research on the new administrative standards that may be coming to North Carolina. Sorry about that, Craig, but South Carolina will probably adopt them as well down the road. So that's kind of our plan for the day. All right, now just remind you of a couple of things. As you are looking at your organizational development plan, I know a couple of you have sent me, can I do this one? Is this a great idea? Continue if you want to do that. Shoot me an idea what you're thinking about. Already A and B has been open to you. Probably on March the 2nd or 3rd, or even before, I may open C, but we will have on our next face-to-face, I will open all parts of the guidance for the OPD. So I just want to remind you as well, there's a sample here. There is a sample a sample of the PowerPoint presentation as well. Discussion board, remember you're putting stuff there for me. And I don't know if there's anything else I need to mention other than just a reality check for everyone. You know, my due dates are very flexible. I mean, as long as you have everything in by that April 29th, your due dates are very, very flexible. But I do want to just kind of a reality check in that I know you've got spring break coming up. I know you've got a lot of end of the year activities coming as well. I know February, March, and April are going to sneak up on us, or March and April are going to sneak up on us a lot quicker than you realize. So at this point, you should have already done some of your discussion boards. You should have turned in a number of items for me, and you really should have that plan, an idea of what plan you're going to be working on. So don't freak out if you're not there, but just realize that means that the ball is moving. So just a reality check. I don't want you to fall behind. So continue working on those discussion boards. Continue working on, every time you do a PowerPoint presentation, pop it in there for a grade. Really right now, the big thing I want you to concentrate on is this OPD guidance, or OPD, parts A and B. If you're uncomfortable with your plan, send me an email or stick around tonight at the end. Let's talk about it. But that's probably the big project coming up. Everything else we do. Now, on our next face-to-face, we're going to spend a little time talking about the OPD. A, B, C, D, E, F, all parts of it. We'll do that on that first Saturday. And so I want to make sure that you're kind of into it. So even though my deadlines are kind of fuzzy, please go ahead and get started on those and make sure you have something going. And I am sticking around if you need me for something. All right, well, let's go to any questions on that. And I know a couple of people may in or out, coming in and out. You're adults, do what you need to do. All right. Before we start with our presentations tonight, I have to do one for you, and then we're going to let Lakeisha finish up her presentation on Michelle Obama. And I'm waiting any day for Michelle to announce that she's running for president. I'm keeping my fingers crossed, so hopefully we'll have that out there. But I'm going to talk about two things here on the thing. I'm going to make them available to you, but I want you to see, and again, Craig, even though it's geared toward North Carolina, I think it's something that will be very timely for you in South Carolina as well. Two quick little things I want to show you, and if you will refresh, they will be available to you. One of the things that I have noticed in my other classes, in my master's class as well as in my other doctor's class, and the other doctoral class is the 708, so it's a couple of classes ahead of you, a couple of semesters ahead of you. But one of the things that I've noticed is that in their response to a couple of scenarios, or in their response to a couple of ethics questions or discussion boards, that this is something that really needs to be discussed a little bit more. And that is the North Carolina General Statute 115C 288. If I can get it to come up. All right, this link is open to you, but this one is a very important one and I know most of you have already gotten into administration, and some will soon be into the principalship, some will soon be beyond that. But if you are in a local setting, you should be very familiar with 115C 288, the power and duties of the principal or supervisors. If you are an assistant principal now, which most of you are, or if you're a current principal, or if you are an instructional coach, or even a teacher, and this is where you are heading, this is something you need to know, because this can get you into a lot of trouble. And I've discovered in my other classes that evidently somewhere along the way we're not doing a very good job of promoting this. But 115C 288 in the North Carolina General Statute talks about the duties and powers of the principal. Craig, there is no corresponding statute. I looked and looked today. There's no corresponding statute except I think it's number 59 in South Carolina. But it is if you find something you want to share it with me, I would love to put it on this website, link it. But there's nothing that I found that specifically speaks to the duties of the principal or supervisor. It's kind of written into the general statute. It's all over the place, whereas North Carolina has codified it into one particular section. But you need to know these things. And the reason this is going somewhere, because under the ethics scenarios and some of the other things that I am reading, there's not a clear understanding, perhaps not just from you, but from everyone who I've taught, that this is something that needs to be reviewed. The powers and duties of this principal in North Carolina, and if you are the acting principal, as Matt was and may still be, if you are the acting principal, this applies to you as well, because in the absence of the principal, you are the principal, and all the responsibilities and duties of the principal go along with you. The assistant principal has the powers of the principal in the absence of the principal. That means you have the liability as well. So, all right, number one, of course, and I'm going to walk through these very quickly. This is a big one. Number one, have you all seen this? You need to review it often, because this is where it's going. But it outlines the duties and responsibilities of the principal, and the first and foremost, of course, is to grade and classify pupils. And this is something that when you get into the superintendent's office or the assistant superintendent's office, that a parent comes to you and tells you they tried to work with the principal and they won't move their child to another teacher's class, you can just throw up your hands and say, I can't help you, because the North Carolina law is very, very clear that that is the duty of the principal. If you are in an elementary school and you have Read to Achieve, and some of your students in third grade have not met that standard, at the end of the year, though, it is up to you, and you have the power to classify that student as a fourth grader or to retain that child as a third grader. Now, your district may do something different, but by the laws of North Carolina, the principal is the only one who can grade and classify. You've got to make all those reports. And probably the biggest report, of course, is the fire drill. You got to make sure that's done. You've got to work on improving instruction. All of your duties are spelled out here. So it's there for you. But the ones that I really want to talk about, and number M or letter M was added just recently, as we talked about homeless children and children in the military. They do get a little bit more of a more provisions in favor of them in the North Carolina General Statutes. But the reason why I'm bringing this up, I wanted you to see 115 and have a close, handy reference to it. 115C 3 288. The other thing I want you to see, or I want to talk a little bit about, is the North Carolina duty to report. You are well familiar with this, I hope. But in some of the scenarios that I've read from other classes and from some of the discussion boards, this is not something that's easily, and it's unlocked. This is not something that I'm seeing a lot of understanding of. So I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about this to you, even though your goal is to end up being in a different position other than the principal or the assistant principal. You need to know this. All right, the duty to report. North Carolina makes it a requirement, and South Carolina, Craig, if you find something, just you'll be my resource for South Carolina, let me know. But in North Carolina, a principal, an assistant principal, an administrator, that includes you, Melody, in the central office, anyone in the central office. If you are an administrator, there's a North Carolina duty to report. And this duty is very concrete and very specific about the kinds of things you have to do. Now, here's where this is going. The duty to report is a requirement by law. If you don't report, you have not completed your duty. And that means you are guilty of a misdemeanor. And not too long ago, there were principals in the news who were guilty of misdemeanors because they failed to report something. So I put this out there because in a couple of things I'm seeing that perhaps some steps are being neglected in some of our scenarios. 115C 288 indicates, let me move you guys down here, that there are certain things that you have to report. And the School Board Association has had, the North Carolina School Board, North Carolina Board of Education, State Board of Education has put that out too. And annually, you are required to report to the State Board. Now that goes straight on to the General Assembly and helps become a part of their funding formula, or it should. But I say this because if you are not following these, you are committing a misdemeanor. You are putting yourself in possible litigation. And ignorance of the law, if you say, I didn't know it, is not a good excuse. They can still come after you, and they will, because these are the kinds of things. And not too long ago in a county, about 5 years ago, in a county below the one that I was superintendent in, we had a very hurried meeting with our sheriff of our county. And he met with me and he met with all of my principals, and he said, look, you don't need to look any further than the county below you to understand what's happening. And in that county, a principal was charged with a misdemeanor because he did not report a reportable offense. And the district attorney was running for re-election and made a big deal out of it. And that principal eventually went on to lose his job and become reprimanded by the State Board of Education. So I'm going to spend a little time on this just to make sure that it's pretty clear. There are certain offenses that have to be reported, and these are the things that you have no choice to. And here are the steps, and this is open to you. If something like this happens in your building and you are the person that is told that, you have an immediate responsibility to report it. First step is to a law enforcement official. Number one, law enforcement. If you have an SRO in your building, that's law enforcement. If you don't have an SRO in your building, it's a call to whoever the SRO that serves your building or whoever the law enforcement person that serves your building. The next call, first call is law enforcement. The next call is your superintendent's office. Now, in your superintendent's office or in your county, there is probably a procedure. And so I would recommend that you pull that procedure out if you're in a building so you will know exactly what you are expected to do. But there is a duty to report. Number one, law enforcement. And all of these that are on this next couple of slides must be reported to law enforcement and then to the central office. It may be the superintendent's secretary. That's the other thing you need to find out is who is the person in the central office that we report to. All right, here they are. Of course, it makes sense that if someone's assaulted and there's serious personal injury, and you'll see all the 6 things listed here, that has to be reported. Law enforcement first. Anytime there's a weapon, of course. Anytime there's serious personal injury, it has to be reported to law enforcement. Then that call to the superintendent's office. Assault involved, and here's where this is going. I have read so many scenarios, so many what if situations where the candidate, the person in this class, or not this class, but the other class, has answered, well, I would call the mom in, or I would call the superintendent, and at no point did they mention calling law enforcement. And if we don't call law enforcement, we're not reporting. All right, assault with a weapon is the next one. And you can see they even have listed 16 different kinds of things that classify as a weapon. And an assault, of course, is an attack of someone that feels like they could be threatened. The next one is assault on school officials. And remember, all of us who work or all of you who work in the public school systems, particularly in North Carolina, you are designated and defined when you are in your job as a public official. And so anytime someone assaults a public official, the punishment is much more severe in North Carolina if you assault a public official. So that means if someone assaults a teacher, someone assaults you as the assistant principal, the penalties for them will be much more severe than if they waited till over the weekend and because you took their parking spot, they hit you. It's a whole different thing. If you are acting in the execution of your duties, you are a public official. And for someone to assault you or attack you, or even volunteers if they are in the building. They have to be in the school building. Making bomb threats, bomb hopes, all those kinds of things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be on the building. It could be on the bus. It could be on any of the grounds as well, and there are other public facilities mentioned. If there's willful burning, of course, if there's homicide, murder, if there's a kidnapping or where people are held against their will, all of these things have to be immediately reported. Law enforcement first, superintendent's office second. If there is an underage sale or purchase, and this is one that may catch you up because sometimes we don't report, or we haven't in the past. I know in my county, a couple of principals I had to get on about this, and that is underage sale, purchase, or provisions or consumption of alcoholic beverages. That child that comes to school with a little alcohol on their breath that you smell in the parking lot, I'm sorry, it may be the mayor's son. It is still reported to the SRO officer. That is a reportable offense that you must report. And it could be any one of these alcoholic beverages, any controlled substance. That could be, of course, here they are listed. Now, that does not include a vapor cigarette, not yet. That probably will be added at some point. No, I doubt it because cigarettes aren't there either. Any possession of a firearm. Now, for those of you in elementary school, this one probably is a little bit more difficult for you, but if someone brings one of these, you're going to have to call law enforcement, even if the child forgot that it was in their book bag.
Dr. Stone.
Yes.
I have a question regarding the vape, because now they're starting to put meth and different things inside those vapes. It's not just a cigarette anymore.
Oh, good Lord.
So, yeah, it's getting bad. We had a couple of students in our district who got sent to alternative school because they bought, they were using it on campus or whatever the case may be. So the vape is not just cigarettes anymore. They're actually putting meth and different other things inside the vape these days.
Wow. Well, that would be clearly number 9, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Oh, that's scary. Thank you. All right, possession of a firearm. That could be a stunt gun, air rifle, air pistol, a BB gun. If that middle schooler brings in that BB gun, it is a possession of a firearm. It has to be reported. Law enforcement first. Who's second? Superintendent. Possession of a weapon. Any of those things that are listed there, and that could be anywhere. Look at that. Slingshot, dagger, knife. Now, elementary schools, this is where I usually get a question. What about the little kid who who's got the little pocket knife in his pocket when he comes to school? How many of you would report him? Anybody? To law enforcement? He just forgot over the weekend, comes in on Monday. Little bitty Swiss Army knife, pocket knife. Anybody report him?
I just did yesterday.
Good. You have to.
Absolutely.
Let law enforcement make that call. But you have to. I mean, it's right here. It doesn't say if they're a kindergartner, it doesn't count. You got to do it. And remember, it's law enforcement first, superintendent's office second. And I hope I'm making that point. Law enforcement first. And the reason for that is because that's who our ultimate duty to report is to. The duty to report is to law enforcement. The duty to report to the district may be the superintendent's, but the law and your policy may say you have a duty, and it will say you have a duty to report to the superintendent. But the law, which means they can come and get you, says that you must report to law enforcement. All right, if you have, there's possession of a weapon. Let me move you guys again. Of course, rape, statutory rape, any kind of rape or sexual assault like that. Robbery, sexual assault, here is sexual assault, not including rape or sexual offense. This may be the boy who grabs the girl in the hall, law enforcement. And let me just say this too. In my 20 years as being a superintendent, I would suggest anytime that somebody tells you that something about sex, it is reported, period. Let someone else do the investigation. Because if you sweep it under the rug, Johnny is just playful. He probably didn't mean to touch the girl there. I'm sorry. Johnny is a grown, and particularly in high school and elementary and in middle, it needs to be reported.
Dr. Stone.
Yes.
Just a question, and I don't know if it's down further. With the rape, it's specifically talking about vaginal intercourse, but what if it's like on a boy, like it's sodomy? Would that be the same thing, but it's not listed there. It's specifically saying vaginal.
Well, I would consider that. Well, it does, doesn't it? But it is rape.
Okay, so it's not a separate place. That would just be, they need to update that.
They definitely need to update that. That's an interesting point. I
don't know. I think we talked about this a couple of years ago. I think that's considered sexual assault because I think I'm not 100% sure, but I know a couple of years, 'cause I know with North Carolina specifically, there's some states where that's not considered rape because they don't have that listed. So there's still some states within their law that even sodomy is not listed. It's not classified as a rape. It's classified as a sexual assault, but not as a rape.
Looks like it's up under bullet 3.
Yeah, a person between a sexual assault. Well, that's a fault with the law because rape is, men and women can be raped. So I think it should be back up into the rape. And that may be just North Carolina behind the times and not realizing that things like that happen. But you are correct. It is covered under sexual assault, but it should be covered under rape as well, in my opinion. All right, it's more. Was this number 15, sexual offense? And again, anything with sex, guys, please report it. No matter how old they are, report it. Let somebody else do the investigation. Let someone else be the person who looks at that. Indecent liberties with the minor, and that could be that could be a student to student, that could be a teacher to a student. Again, anything with sex, report it. Let someone else do the work on that. The consequences of failure to report, and again, it's failure to report to who? Who does the law say you have to report to?
Law enforcement.
Law enforcement first. Then you pick up that phone and you call the superintendent's office and talk to someone down there. It is a misdemeanor, and it could very well be turned over to the appropriate law enforcement, and then you could be in trouble. So that's my spiel on the North Carolina General Statute 115C and North Carolina duty to report. So please make sure you kind of keep that. Now, your district may be somewhat different, and if they are, that's super. But you may want to find out from your district exactly what they do or what's the requirement. You may want to also find out, for those of you, particularly in the assistant principal's position, where you may at some point have to be the person who makes that call, you definitely want to ask your principal or someone in the central office, who is the contact person for law enforcement here. Now, everybody who's got an SRO officer, immediately, that's law enforcement. That's your contact. The minute that girl walks into your office and says this boy touched her in the bathroom, hang on a minute, get law enforcement in there and let law enforcement be a part of it. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to stop your investigation, because there are two investigations that go on when law enforcement's involved. Law enforcement will do one of them, and theirs is they have a higher standard of guilt and all than we do, and they don't have quite the powers that we do by them being in school. But my suggestion, if it ever happens, is you take your cue from law enforcement. What do you want us to do? Because we have school rules and school procedures too that have consequences for this action. There's the legal part. The trouble with the North Carolina law, there's also the school's response. So just because the legal requirement, the legal people come back and say we don't have enough evidence, if you, in your evidence, you've discovered that you do have enough that a policy has been violated, then of course you can apply that policy. Be very careful with that, because parents will automatically come back and say law enforcement didn't find anything and you're just trying to get my child anyway. So have your ducks in a row, but you can apply board policy, which is not as stringent as the law. So, but the first thing, bring law enforcement in. Then the second thing is to also remember that you have to conduct your own investigation. But if it's something that's of a criminal nature, like one of those 16, I would take my cue from law enforcement. What do you want me to do? And law enforcement oftentimes will say, well, just back away, let us talk to your people. And then just keep in mind that you need to be a part of that process when they report out, and be thinking about what you're going to do for your own board policy violations. So 2 investigations. So now when you do your PowerPoints or you do your scenarios or things with me, I'm sure the first thing I'll read on there is that call law enforcement or talk to the SRO. And the second thing would be to put a call into the superintendent's office so he will know what's going on. He or she will know what's going on. Okay, last week I asked you to tell me what your why is. So who wants to tell me in 3 words what your why is? What's your why?
Okay, you said we could have up to 5 words.
Okay, I'll give you 5.
So this is our personal why, right? Not our professional why. Okay, so mine is love manifests itself through honesty.
So your personal why is honesty.
That love manifests itself through honesty. I believe that in order to show love to people, you have to be honest with them. There cannot be true love without honesty. And that's love to anyone, love to a child, love to a spouse, love to a friend.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Come on, this was an assignment. You guys are smart. There's 10 of you too. 9 more. Hope, what's yours?
Building relationships through trust and respect.
Building relationships. So your why is building relationships.
Exactly.
And the how is through trust and respect. All right, Craig?
My why is I want to make a difference.
Oh, I'm trying to think of that as how would we succinctly put that into a why? My why is making a difference.
Yeah, making a difference.
All right, going across my screen, that makes you next, Matt.
My why is achieving the promise of racial equity.
Okay. So your why then, in a nutshell, is
Equity.
equity for all.
Yeah.
All right. Suzanne's gone there. Hope's done hers. Lavette?
Mine is pursue understanding to shift hearts.
To shift what?
Hearts.
Heart. Pursue understanding to shift hearts. So your why is really understanding. And understanding with action. Understanding with
Guess in a nutshell is to help to it's relationships, to make people better, or to understand how I can help others.
So it really is, again, about building positive relationships, helpful relationships. All right. Melody?
I had the same thing, to build positive relationships, to help humanity, to help people.
All right, you copied. Sabrina?
I strive to listen, learn, and lead in everything I do.
Listen, learn, lead. You ought to develop that into like a tri-Ls or something.
Yeah, L cubed.
Cubed Ls. All right. Crystal, you're up.
Empowerment makes all the difference.
Ooh, empowerment is your why. I like that. Angela, are you away from your desk? Do not, Angela, it looks like she stepped away, so you guys make sure
I'm here. Wait, hold on. Is my camera the wrong way? Wait.
All I see is your cereal bowl.
Oh, that's my salad. See?
Oh,
Oh. Can you see me or no? I'm here.
I cannot, but I can hear you.
Okay.
Why?
Actually, my why is building relationship that empowers others, and so I love to empower through leadership. Mm-hmm.
All right, and that leaves you, Lakeisha.
I think we're the relationship class. My why is seeking relationships to manifest success.
All right. Relationships is an excellent why. It truly is, because it encompasses so many different things with the relationships. It's probably from, because I asked everyone down here at Gardner Webb today what was their why. And I bet I heard relationships. I asked about 5 people. And I bet I heard relationships 3 of those times. So relationships are a powerful why. Very good. All right. Lakeisha, you are up, and we wanted to finish talking about Michelle Obama. And let me tell you what happened last week. This is all done through my telephone, evidently. And so when I was moving something, I hit the receiver of my telephone, which popped the receiver off a little bit, and that made the sound go away. So I have moved my phone all the way to the other side of my desk so it will not be touched. So anyway, that's what happened. Where did you go? Where are you, Lakeisha? You're not on my screen.
I'm still here.
There you are. All right. I will turn the screen over. What I will do is I will stop sharing, and then there's that green button for you, and and you can pick up wherever you left off or wherever you want to with Michelle Obama.
Okay.
If you will hit this little green screen down, this little green share down here.
Okay.
There you go. All right, we see your screen. We see something.
Okay, here I go again with my technical difficulties. Let me try it again.
Would you like for me to go ahead and try to pull up your email to me, PowerPoint?
Okay, are you able to see it now?
No, we're still seeing your host name and user and stuff like that.
Okay, how about now?
Oh, there she is.
Yay. Okay. Here we go. I am not going to belabor my introduction to Michelle because we pretty much talked about on the last session her education, her career, and then before we were disconnected, we started talking about the 8 major theories of leadership. So what I'm going to do is just kind of pick up from here and just kind of reiterate for everyone the 8 major theories of leadership so that we can kind of go into the conclusion of the PowerPoint on Michelle. If you look at the very first one, the great man theory just kind of talks about great leaders are simply naturally born. They have those natural characteristics like charisma, confidence, and intelligence. The second major theory of leadership is just trait theories. Again, you're just pretty much born with certain qualities and traits that make you a great leader, like self-confidence and courage. The third leadership theory is contingency, where leaders focus on particular variables in the environment that kind of help you pick out your leadership style. You assess the needs of your followers and you take stock of the situation and you adjust your behavior and your leadership style accordingly. The fourth leadership style is situational, which is kind of similar to contingency, wherein you just look at the situation and you adjust your leadership style to fit the particular situation and you decipher what type of decision making is appropriate for that situation. The fifth one is behavioral. According to this theory, everyone can learn to be a leader through teaching and observation. Number 6 is the participative theory that suggests that the ideal leadership style is when you take the feelings and the thoughts of others into account when making decisions.
Go ahead and advance your slide.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
The seventh one, management theory, you're focusing on being a manager. You pretty much use your ability to issue rewards and punishments as your leadership style. And the last one that I think all of us can really identify with is the relationship theory, where you focus on motivating and inspiring people by helping them see the great things about themselves to help them work with the group for the higher good. We talked about a little bit the last time. Michelle had all these different leadership styles kind of rolled up into one, and she was a great asset to her husband when he began his campaign to become the first African-American president. And so she was very instrumental in his campaigning by the things she said, and she just had a knack for being relatable, and people were naturally drawn to Michelle Obama.
Okay, we're still stuck on slide 6.
Okay. Are we moving now?
No. Okay. You keep going though. Your presentation. Go ahead.
Okay. Some of the things that she specifically worked towards was she kind of had her own agenda when her husband became the president. One thing she particularly worked on was the Affordable Care Act, and she specifically worked on focusing attention on issues to help military families. She co-founded the Joining Forces program to expand educational opportunities for veterans, and she did everything she could to raise awareness about the difficulties facing childhood obesity and the things that were plaguing military families. Is it moving now?
No.
What in the world?
That's okay. You go right ahead.
That's disturbing. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Oh, man. Okay, the ability to inspire. In the book that we already Start With Why, the author states that there are only 2 ways to influence human behavior. You can either manipulate it or you can inspire it. Michelle Obama's relatable persona and the creation of platforms dedicated to improving the human condition helped to inspire us to follow her lead. In our daily roles as present and future educational leaders, we strive to inspire all the stakeholders that we deal with, our parents, staff members, and communities, by trying to model the positive change that we would like to see in them and the world. Okay, now this part I really would like for you to be able to see the code, because this kind of closes us out and gives us a chance to interact.
We can see it.
Okay, good. This is just, I chose a couple of quotes that I think really spoke to who she is and the things that really drew us to her. This particular slide says, success is only meaningful and enjoyable if it feels like your own. Just looking at those 8 leadership styles that I just mentioned, if we choose a leadership theory for her, as far as this particular quote speaks to, which leadership theory do we all think this probably would fit? Even though it could fit more than one, what's one that kind of jumps out at you? Relationship, great man theory, contingency. Which one this quote kind of speaks to, that success is only meaningful and enjoyable if it feels like your own?
Relationships?
Relationship? Exactly.
Ah!
This particular one just kind of tells us that she was very concerned about making sure that those people involved in any decision-making process felt the success of the group to be able to move toward the higher good for everyone. Another quote, you can't make decisions based on fear and the possibility of what might happen. What kind of leadership theory do you think that particular quote speaks to?
Do you think you might go back to the slide that has the theories listed so people can, maybe it's like number 6 and 7, I think they were.
Yes, sir, I'll go right back. Okay, the great man, where you're just naturally born. The trait theory, the second one. the contingency theory, where you kind of focus on the situation, but you also look at the group and what they think when you adjust what you're to address the needs of everyone. Situational, behavioral, participative, and that word participate, of course, makes you think about having more than one person participate in the decision-making process, the management theory, and then relationship. This is what we talked about during our first face-to-face session, so it's kind of something that we did initially, but if you kind of think about the word, and it kind of fits what her quote says. So we did say the first one was relationship, but this particular one, that you can't make decisions based on fear and the possibility of what might happen. So this seems to me like it's kind of saying that you think about what the situation could be, and then you adjust based on what you think would be the best for the greater of the group, of the entire group.
So situational?
Yeah.
Situational. And see, the thing about situational, it is contingency and situational to me were very, very similar, because your situation or your reaction to a situation is contingent upon what's going on. So those two, of course, there's no right or wrong answers, because if you look at her quotes, we could argue that it's a combination of several of them. Another one, we should always have 3 friends in our lives. One who walks ahead of us, who we look up to and follow. One who walks beside us, who is with us every step of our journey. And one we reach back for and bring along after we've cleared the way.
Relational.
I was thinking precipitative too, yeah.
Yeah. But the relationships, of course, because having friends, of course, is through the building of relationships. But participative also fits this one as well, because you are making sure that everyone, the ones walking with you or behind you, are part of the process. Okay, the next one, if you would, could I have someone read that one for us?
Through my education, I didn't just develop skills. I didn't just develop the ability to learn, but I developed confidence.
Okay, what leadership theory do you all think that may fit?
I think when I see the confidence, I think of the trait theory, the self, because it said about self-confidence. When I see that quote, I'm thinking about maybe the trait theory.
I was thinking maybe behavioral, yeah.
Behavioral, okay.
But you know what? Also, it fits the trait theory, because that means that you're born with certain things, but you also can learn to be a great leader through observation and great teaching. So that fits as well. Another one, could someone read that for us?
We know that our greatness comes when we appreciate each other's strengths, when we learn from each other, when we lean on each other.
Okay, class, what do you think this is?
Lakeisha, remind me, what was the great man theory? What was that one?
That you're just naturally born to be a great leader. You just have it in you. But this one talks about learning from relationships.
Would that be the participative one? Because it's a group of people?
Yes, ma'am. It fits, but you know, it could be some other things. We talk about relationships, because you learn from each other. You lean on one another. So again, it's a culmination of a lot of them. Okay, this one I think is kind of easy, but let's look at this one. People who are truly strong lift others up. People who are truly powerful bring others together.
That one sounds like great man theory to me.
Yes, ma'am. People that are just naturally strong have that leadership quality. They're born with it. And then I just kind of pulled some inspirational quotes that I thought fits any particular career you could have, because we know that success isn't about how much money you make. It's about the difference you make in people's lives. And I really like number 2 in the educational setting, because, and it says real meaning, but of course I thought the word leader fit that where the word men is, that real leaders treat the janitor with the same respect as the CEO. We know we always try to strive to model the behavior. So if we ask our students to make sure that they maintain a clean area, then we should do the same. And the one that I think kind of put Michelle Obama on the map was number 3. When they go low, we go high. Because I even hear some of the students saying that sometimes whenever they're making jokes with one another, if someone wants to be the one in the group to be the one that make everyone understand, that's not the way to be. So I really love number 3. And then as testing coordinator, you're gonna see me do a whole lot of little things with testing because it's just kind of what I do all the time. So I thought I would end with this little quote from her. It says, and Michelle Obama actually said, "In my future, if my future were determined just by my performance on a standardized test, I wouldn't be here. I guarantee you that." So that is something we could definitely use to inspire our students, letting them know that a standardized test does not, of course, determine their aptitude in life.
Right.
Any questions?
And kids need to know that too, because we put so much emphasis on that test.
Yes,
Did
we
you
do.
find that quote, or can you send that to me, please?
I sure will. I will.
Yeah, I love her quotes. All right, if you will stop sharing.
Okay.
There you go. And so, any questions on the why? Because we had finished with the book, The Why. And it's a great, powerful book. But again, I think that the power in it lies in if we can define and say what our own why is. So you've done that with your personal life. You may want to consider doing that with your professional life too. And that's a great question to start at a staff meeting. Define what the why is, and then ask your staff if they can come together. That's a good way to start writing a mission and a vision for a school, is for that school to define its why. It's a great talking point to me. I mean, it's a great book. It's a great place to start. All right. So let's turn our attention now to the 21 Irrefutable Truths. This should be interesting. That is a great book, in my opinion. All right, so I have chapter 1, and these are chapters too. That's interesting. Chapter 1, that would be you, Matt.
Okie dokie. Give me a moment. Share.
Down here would be the share.
Is it working?
We see where it says you have started screen sharing, but it's black, solid black with a white lettering.
Okay.
So I guess you got to pull up something. I don't know what your screen looks like, but
now is it working?
The law of the lid.
Yeah.
That's you. Yep.
All right.
Tell me what program you're using, Matt.
PowerPoint.
This is PowerPoint?
Yes.
PowerPoint Advanced, like, huh?
So it all has like a theme. Well, I'll get to that. So it was chapter 1 was the law of the lid. Leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. So the law of the lid. The law of the lid helps others understand the value of leadership. The lower an individual's ability to lead, the lower the lid on his potential, his or her potentials. The higher an individual's ability to lead, the higher the lid on his or her potential. So it began with the story of the McDonald's brothers. So in 1930, Dick and Maurice McDonald moved to New Hampshire to California in search of the American dream. 7 years later, they ended up opening a drive-through restaurant in San Bernardino and saw some serious success. They see that times are changing. In 1948, they streamlined the menu and created an assembly line style kitchen that dubbed the Speedy Service System. By mid-1950s, they are wealthy business owners. They began getting 300 plus requests per month from other restaurant entrepreneurs wanting to learn their system. They decided to franchise the McDonald's restaurant, and it was a dismal failure. The brothers were great thinkers and managers, but they were not leaders. Oh, whoa. Oops. Let me go back. Sorry.
You're in a hurry.
Yeah. No, I keep tapping the screen. Can you see it now?
Yes. It's
okay. All right. At the height of the success, Dick and Maurice found themselves smack dab against the law of the lid. So, partnering with a leader. In 1954, the McDonald brothers partnered up with a man named Ray Kroc, who ran his company making milkshake machines. Kroc strikes a deal with McDonald Brothers and forms McDonald Systems, later called McDonald Corporation. Kroc brought the rights to McDonald's and opened his own franchise. He used that restaurant to sell other franchises. And he began to recruit and hire the sharpest people they could find to build a McDonald's nationwide. In 1961, for the sum of $2.7 million, Kroc buys out the exclusive right to McDonald's from the brothers and proceeds to grow it to a global entity. In the years that the brother attempted to franchise the restaurant, they sold the concept just 15 times, and only 10 of those buyers opened the restaurant. And 4 years after buying up the McDonald's brothers, Ray Kroc had opened 100 restaurants. 4 years after that, he opened 500 McDonald's. So the point of this story was just like the brothers who originally started McDonald's, they were great managers. They were able to manage it, but they weren't a leader. A leader sees like the vision and sees the future of it. So Ray Kroc was able to see like the future of McDonald's and understand like it was a leader, and he got to see like the future of it. So I have a group. I wanted to answer one of these three questions. You guys can decide. Like, how can we raise the lid on our inspiring school leaders? How do we identify smart, talented, successful educators and provide them with opportunities for influence and leadership? And through which processes can we identify a person's leadership ability? And a personal story with me, I think just when we're looking at how do we identify smart, talented, successful educators and provide them with opportunities for influence and leadership, I think with our beginning teachers, we don't really provide our beginning teachers with enough access for leadership potential and ways that it can lead, because we always label them like beginning teachers. But I feel like a lot of beginning teachers have a lot of great ideas, but a lot of times we just don't give them the time. But you really can feel free to answer any of these three questions.
Well, Matt, I would agree with you about we have to tap into the potential of beginning teachers, because we're losing so many teachers in the first 3 years in education. And I think that if we were able to tap into their strengths and provide them some opportunities to lead, because a lot of times I found when I was a teacher, my principal, she tapped me to take on some leadership opportunities early on. And I think it's what convinced me to stay in the field, because at the time I had interest of going to law school and doing other things, but because she tapped into me early on, I eventually, chose to stay in the career of education. So I think that's a great point. That a lot of times we want people to pay their dues, quote unquote, pay their dues and spend all this time in education before we tap them to lead an initiative or, tap into the leadership skills. So I think that's a great point.
Let me ask something from all of you, because this is something that I think maybe needs to be revisited by North Carolina. But in North Carolina, sorry, Craig, in North Carolina, if you are a beginning teacher in the first 3 years of your career, or if you're in the last 3 years of your career, North Carolina law says that, or encourages principals not to give you duties, and in order to do that, you have to sign off. Is that discouraging, this very same thing that we're saying that we should not be trying to do? Because I can see advantages to that, but I can also see some tremendous disadvantages. So what do you think? Are we killing our future talent by making them stay silent and in the classroom just doing the teaching for 3 years? Or is that an important component to have?
Well, I have found that even though those rules are in place for the first 3 years, here in Cumberland County, they can waive that, and so many of my teachers who have those leadership of talents and abilities, they'll waive. There's a form they sign saying, I accept this duty or this opportunity to lead this group or this club or whatever it is. So I'm finding that, here there's still an opportunity, even though that's in place, and many of them take advantage of it.
And I think as well too, I think that would depend on the teacher. And as leaders, we have to be able to give opportunities, but we also have to assess to know what their strengths are. And some teachers need their focus to be in the classroom to strengthen that. But you also, as you work with teacher leaders, you know the teachers who do have the potential to be able to do things additionally. So I think it's about us getting to know our teachers as well, and who can or who may need a little bit more specific focus time in the classroom. And I know that a lot of my staff are in hearing, when you're hearing about that waiver, it's a lot of times where they talk about coaching to coach a sport, but they don't a lot of times equate that to other leadership activities or those things in the classroom too. So I think giving it a good understanding and then making sure they have the right mentors, I think is also very important, because the mentors kind of shape a lot of the ideas that the new teachers have, and put those positive or negative thoughts and connotations in their minds, which sometimes deters the leadership that they can have. So I think it's a lot of things, but we have to know our people and, you know, who needs what and who is ready for those things to be able to make sure that the right people do have those opportunities.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. I think a lot of times that when we do look for those like leadership opportunities, always looked at like athletics. But when you look at like elementary school, because I think the benefit of having elementary school specifically, because we don't necessarily have athletics. So we have to look at like the school improvement team, PTA, like what are we doing? Are we creating mentor programs? And that really like encourages you to almost like be creative and create something, because a lot of times, like, I mean, I've never worked in middle or high school, but I know with middle and high school, you have those certain opportunities with athletics that you can just, you know, sign on to be a coach. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm a coach. I met that standard, and so on and so forth. But I'll continue with.
Hang on a minute. Got one more thing. On your last point there, I want to ask this, and you can do by show of hands. How many of you had someone who kind of tapped you on the shoulder and said, you're a leader, or you'd make a great leader? All right. So, I'm sorry, Matt, I'm slowing you down, but so what did they see in you? Why did they tap you instead of that teacher down the hall? To the heart of his third point here.
I think one of the reasons why the person who came to me was because I went to him. When I had an idea, when I thought of a project or a plan was kind of sparking in my brain that I thought would support students or help teachers or help connect with the community, I was not quiet. I went to my principal and I said, hey, you know, we need to probably think about a better transition plan from middle school to high school. We're in a transient area because of military. We don't do a really good job of making sure that our students who are new in the middle of the school year have a good transition into our school. We need a buddy system for students. We need this, we need that. And I think that's why I was tapped, to be honest with you.
Okay. So initiative on your part.
Yes.
All right. All right, Matt.
So this is one of the things it says. So success without, so if you look on the left, you have a visual representation of someone that is dedicated to success, but is not caring about or thinking about leadership. So it's kind of like the potential of the McDonald brothers. Like they really care about success, and you see how the level of success is almost like at an 8 or an 8. It is at an 8, almost at a 9. But in order to get to a 10, you essentially have to like kill yourself due to the lack of effectiveness. But on the right, you have a visual representation of someone who's equally dedicated to success, but is on a 7 on the leadership ability. That alone makes them 600% more effective. This is because leadership has a multiplying effect. So you can't just have one, you have to have both components, media leadership and successful dedication, in order to drive like this effectiveness of a business, or in this case, a school, which is kind of business. The change in direction of the organization and change of the leader. Leadership ability is always the lid on personal organizational effectiveness. If a person's leadership ability is high, then the organization's lid is high. But if it's not, then the organization is limited. That's why in times of trouble, organizations look for new leadership. Getting rid of the leader isn't the only way to improve the organization. Just as there is a lid, there's also a way to raise it. That is a subject of another going forward, the law of process. But the group chat I had is discuss an instance when a change in the leadership improved a group's effectiveness, or discuss an instance when a change in the leadership diminished a group effectiveness.
Matt, I'll just talk about kind of one of the discussion boards, the human resource one. It kind of reminded me of my post that I posted about my what was it called? My irreplaceable. There we go. My irreplaceable. There was a time where a new leader stepped in, and it just kind of changed the whole atmosphere. I mean, it just changed the whole school's performance, and it kind of went in a negative way. Academically, in a negative way, we lost a lot of teachers. A lot of people, the morale of the school was a little bit different. And ever since then, it just kind of seemed like it's been going downhill. And I think it was because of that change in leadership. I don't know if it was because of the change in leadership or how it was done or whatever the case may be. But personally, I have experienced, just somebody losing their enthusiasm for teaching, their enthusiasm for leadership and everything due to a switch in leadership.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, sir.
Can you go back one? I had a question that I wanted to ask. And I hope you guys don't mind me doing this, but this is a part of, I think, the part of the instruction piece. And this is just, not just for Matt, but, these are interesting charts and they do come from the book. Is it possible to have a third chart up there where you have tremendous leadership ability, but very little success? In other words, could there possibly be a third chart? Would it look like the first chart here, but it would be horizontal versus vertical?
Yeah, that's like a dictator. That's almost like a dictator in some ways, right? Because they have a leadership ability, but they don't necessarily have like the camaraderie skills to make it effective for like every single one. Like they have to have those people skills and those social skills. That's like the social emotional part of being like a leader in order to meet those needs.
Right. It's more about their own needs.
Yeah.
Not about the needs or the success of the organization. It's my success. It's my next job. It's my next superintendency. It's whatever the next may be. So yes, you can have that.
Or simply the essence of jerkitude.
Yeah. Oh, excellent. I like that. Good job, Angela. Exactly. All right. Thank you, Matt, for letting me do that.
No problem. So applying the law of the lid to your life. This is just for everybody. Like think about your major goals, then determine which ones require participation or cooperation from others. How will you use your leadership skills to gain participation or cooperation from others? And describe the obstacles in your organization which places limitations on your leadership. So a personal story with me, not that it placed limitations on my leadership, but while being an assistant principal, your principal does a lot, and they definitely lead the school. For the largest part, I was always like the second one in command, like assistant principal. But since she has been on this like extended absence, it was great to almost like to not take over, but to lead the school and to like almost step out of the shadows and able to really like lead instead of like always following in her footsteps. So I think some of the my personal obstacle I would say was just like, when I have such a great instructional leader, sometimes you are in the shadows and you don't really get those moments to really lead. But because of that absence, it really helped my relationship with the staff, and me being so young, it really helped. Like I felt like they were able to believe in me a little bit more, so it really helped. But of course, she's a great instructional leader. She has years of experience. So once she comes back, it's like I will always defer to her for that knowledge.
All right.
So my principal has come out of the closet, so to speak, and pronounced that he's a control freak, and he's trying to let go of that. So he's recently reached out to all of the administrative staff and said, I want you to come up with a project and you're going to be responsible for it. So one of mine is my OPD. So I'm doing MTSS and I'm 100% responsible for implementing that next year. And then another one is we have some extra time built into our day that isn't necessarily assigned out to a specific period, a class period. And so I wanted to have like an advisory period, which we've never had before. So we're an AVID district, if you're familiar with AVID, but we want to turn it into something a little bit more meaningful for our students and make it where we can kind of take what's required of MTSS and the idea behind advisory mentoring time and marry those two together. And I'm going to be able to use a lot of my leadership skills to be able to do that. I've already formed teams, and what we're doing right now is creating a shared vision. So I've talked to them about what, kind of what I see, what my vision is, and I'm gathering information from all of them, and from that we're going to get our shared vision. And I think that that's going to help me to get participation and cooperation from people. But I also know that I'm in a large comprehensive high school with people who, some of whom have been there since day one that building has been open, and they consider themselves master teachers when the real definition that you should use is veteran teachers. And I'm going to get a lot of pushback from them. They don't like change. They feel like if you make change that you're telling them that they're bad teachers. And so I'm going to have to kind of pull them along in, or as the HR article said, we might have to practice a little bit of strategic retention.
Okay.
And I just have one thought. So sometimes when you go into organizations, you acquire the people that were in the organization before you. And I think one big piece of leadership and the success is having a trusting team. And so when you have to try to build trust among people who you don't really trust because they really weren't yours in the first place, I think that is an obstacle that I battle with, because trying to find the people to trust so that I'm able to utilize my leadership skills makes me hesitant to delegate, to be able to do different things, because you're trying to, find your team that is going to help push you to success, because you can't do it by yourself. So I think that's one big obstacle that I'm facing, is in trying to build my team. It's the trust factor, like I said, and some of it you can't really do anything about because they were grandfathered in. And so they're there, and trying to figure out how to work through that is something that I am working with as well in my building, because that is one obstacle that I find.
That's a strong one.
I definitely understand. So my last group chat is just what are yours? So just for something let's share out, what are your area of strength? This will be your strength zone, the area that you get the most effectiveness from. And then your areas of weakness, it will be an area that you naturally struggle and we need to grow in, and most importantly, recruit the assistance of others. So when we think about leadership, these two are. So I was just having everyone share out, like, what's one area of strength that you have, and what's one area of weakness or improvement that you would like to improve upon?
My area is, to improve upon is impatience. I'm not the most patient person in the world. I think a strength for me is I think of myself as a people person. Anyone else?
Matt, I would say that my area of weakness is definitely, I tend to take things real personal, when others don't succeed, or when somebody don't, I guess, like my style of teaching or, providing leadership or whatever the case may be. I tend to take it personally, and I kind of internalize that if I feel like I'm not meeting their needs. And my area of strength, I'm kind of like you, Dr. Stone, my ability to kind of connect with others and build relationship and empower others. And I guess that's why my weakness is the opposite. I take it personal when I can't make a difference in somebody's life.
Matt, I say my area of weakness is take a while to make decisions. And I like to seek out a lot of help before making decisions, which sometimes can be very helpful, but can be also very confusing. And then I think my strength is at relationship piece. I can notice other people's strengths in them before they even notice it in themselves. And I try to tap into that when I'm building those relationships with them.
I think my strength would be flexibility, and working with people in different styles and personalities, and kind of bringing those things together. And my area of weakness would be delegation, because I don't trust a lot, and I just would rather do it myself because it'll get done the right way. So that is something I have to work on.
You know what? Someone told me, Levette, now you sound like me. I was coming into the building here at Garner Webb. I don't know, I was getting out of my car, and I'm the world's worst for talking to myself. And here I am, I'm just minding my own business, just talking to myself. And this student comes up on me, and she says, sir, you know, because I almost ran into her, so I said, I'm so sorry. And she said, what were you doing, having a chat with an expert? That was so cool. I thought she was the greatest person after that. He thought I was chatting with an expert. But remember that if you ever caught talking to yourself, just tell people you're talking to an expert.
I like that.
All right.
I would say for me is relationships. It's not hard for me to develop positive relationships with others or create relationships with individuals, especially in difficult situations. And probably the weakness for me is delegation. I feel like there's some people I can just feel very comfortable to delegate things to and not worry about going back to check. I love that, but if I have to delegate to an individual that I have to check up on, kind of manage, so to speak, that's harder for me to do, and I don't have that level of patience probably for that. I'm like, let's get it going. You got this. Let's go for it. And so that's something I know I got to work on.
Yes, the further up you guys go up the ladder, you're gonna have to delegate a whole lot more. Got to let it go.
Mine are going to be kind of contradictory. It's funny, I had my mid-year review today, and my boss pointed out something to me that I already knew, and that is my weakness is that I tend to intimidate people. I have a very strong personality. I told you that I lead with honesty, so I tend to be honest, not necessarily brutally honest, but if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an answer. But at the same time, I am a relationship builder. So if I have a really good relationship with you, chances are you can take my honesty and I don't intimidate you anymore. But it takes some time to get there with some people.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. So my final is a video, but I know we all struggle with getting videos to work. So I'm actually going to post the link in the chat that we have. Oops. So
you stop sharing.
Yeah, I don't need to share. I'm trying to access. I'm gonna put it in the chat so I can send you all a message. So I'm gonna send it and then I'll start sharing again. So did it get sent to everyone? Okay. So if we click on that.
Did you want us to click, Matt, or are you gonna click on it?
You can click on it. It's just so that you'll be able to hear it because I know the volume doesn't work on it. Like the volume, us sharing doesn't work. So that way you guys can hear it on your end and I'll be able to hear it on my end as well.
Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius won't. Unrewarded genius is practically a cliche. Education won't. The world is full of educated fools. Persistence and determination alone are all powerful. Show that you don't have to be defeated by anything, that you can have peace of mind, and a never-ceasing flow of energy. If you attempt each and every day to achieve these things, the results will make themselves obvious to you. While it may sound like a magical notion, it is in you. A man is what he thinks about all day long.
So just to conclude, I felt like that was good. I just went to end with that. Well, one, because I don't know if anybody's ever seen the movie The Founder, but it definitely relates to everything that that's in chapter 1. The Founder is based off the McDonald's movie and how the original McDonald's brother, how they lost McDonald's, $1 billion company, all because they didn't have the right leadership, the right vision, and everything. And the movie began with this same quote, and it ended with the exact same quote of talent will not carry you. A genius, just being a genius will not carry you. You just really have to have that persistence and determination to be a leader, and in order to get you to where you want to go. So that concludes my presentation. Uh-oh, I can't hear.
Steve, you're muted.
Yes. So Keisha, you're next. So we're going to take like a 3-minute break. And if you want to set up, or if you want me to pull up the PowerPoint you sent me today, you want to try pulling it up, Lakeisha?
She was having some internet issues just a minute ago, so I'm not sure if she's still there. She was going in and out.
Yeah, I think I'm going to try to pull it up myself while we're having our break.
All right, let's break for about 3 and we'll be back.
All right.
Lakeisha, I've got it up on my screen. Let's give our colleagues a little bit more time to get here. Did I tell you my 2 truths, my 2 untruths, and my 1 truth?
No.
We haven't played that? I thought we did. You see what I've got? Part of my problem?
Yep. There's your drinking problem.
There's my drinking
problem. Yeah, we see.
But I have to tell you, it's not Diet Coke, it's Pepsi. That's all we have here, Pepsi. Ugh. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Lakeisha, I know people will be joining us, but for the matter of time, and again, try to keep it within like a 15 to 20-minute time with colleagues coming in on it as well. And I want to remind you all, the reason why we do these chapters, one, it gets you to think a lot about your chapter, but the purpose of it also is to engage your colleagues in meaningful conversations about the chapter. So I know people are different times in their break now, but let's go ahead, Lakeisha.
Okay. I had chapter 2 of the book, and my chapter was the law of influence. And this quote that the author Maxwell begins with is the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And this quote, of course, takes us throughout the entire chapter. I started the chapter with this collage of leaders, and I wanted to start off with the question of what do leaders look like, which is also the way Maxwell began the chapter. He posed this question because he wants us to think about when you look at a leader, is there a certain way that they look? Do they look powerful? Are they large in stature? Can you put two people side by side and tell which one is the best leader? We all know that a great leader does not have a specific defining characteristic that makes us look at them and say, oh, that they're a leader. But we do know from history, these particular leaders in history have their leaders in their own right. If you notice in 2 columns on the screen, these the 5 myths about leadership, which we're going to discuss in depth throughout the presentation, and factors that make a leader, kind of frame Maxwell's entire thesis about the law of influence. I wanted to start talking about the law of influence by talking about the first column, the 5 myths about leadership. And the way I wanted to discuss that was to just think about and examine that how we as leaders talk about these 5 myths that we're about to discuss. But I wanted to talk to them in the context of this principal evaluation instrument rubric that we were introduced to during our first face-to-face session. And of course, this is the South Carolina Principal Evaluation Instrument rubric. But I thought what was very interesting as I read the chapter is I started looking back through these this rubric, and I looked at the myth and the criteria about what makes a leader a leader. And then I looked at how South Carolina principals are evaluated from being exemplary to needing improvement on the same criteria that pretty much makes up the myth. So I think it's going to be interesting to look at the myth and then look at how there's things in the myth that we actually have to exemplify to be considered to be a great leader. Are my slides moving through okay?
They are, and Craig really appreciates this. First time he gets some from South Carolina.
Okay. Okay. The first myth about leadership is the management myth. And that myth speaks to that leading and management are the same. Leadership is about influencing people to follow, while management focuses on maintaining systems and processes. Managers can oftentimes maintain direction, but they often cannot change it. So talking about the management myth, if we look at standard 3 from this principal evaluation instrument, it actually says that even though it's a myth that the leading and management are the same, that we are indeed graded, or not graded, but we are looked at as far as how effective a manager we are.
Lakeisha, we're not on the same slide as you. We're still on standard 1.
Okay. Okay, did it move that time?
No.
How about that?
Nope. It looks stuck.
Okay, let me try one more thing. Let me share. Hey, has it moved?
No, ma'am.
Oh my goodness.
Are you on a PowerPoint?
Yes, sir. Is it moving now?
No.
No. Do we need to send Matt to your house to help you?
Probably.
Do you want me to pull up my PowerPoint?
I wonder what. Okay, let me try one more thing, and if not, we may have to go that direction. I'm gonna look to see what you all are seeing that I'm not showing. Okay, has it moved to the 5 myths about leadership?
No, it's still on the part of the rubric from Standard 1.
I'm gonna try one more time. Okay, is anybody able to see?
Yes, I can see. Mm-hmm.
5 myths about leadership now?
Yes.
Yes, okay. What I was talking about, the management myth, we have to be effective managers in order to be effective leaders in what we do. So even though it's a myth, we have to make sure that we focus on the management part in the proper way to be a good educational leader. Okay, and just looking at this graphic, is everyone able to see the graphic of managers versus leaders?
Yes.
Okay, I would like for someone just to share their thoughts on what you see that's different. Of course, we know that the red figure is the leader. What do you notice is different about the red leader that's a manager and the red leader that is, or the leader that's red that's a leader? What is the difference, or what do you see as far as them, and what do you see as far as those people that are their followers?
And the manager's one, I see kind of like the leader is kind of standing in the front while the followers are kind of in the background, kind of, trying to see, okay, what's next. But in the leader's side, I see the leader kind of walking with the crowd and walking with everyone else and still directing them, but yet he's walking with them to be a part of them.
Okay, does anybody else notice anything?
On the leader side, the people in action are holding hands. It's more of a togetherness type situation than in the manager side where you got somebody leaning on somebody. They seem to be waiting. They're not in action.
Absolutely.
And also it seems like on the manager side, it seemed more kind of cliquish. You have your 2 standing over there, like she pointed out, and then you have your 3 kind of standing over there. And I kind of see that a lot in education with some managerial leaders. You have a lot of cliques also.
I am amazed at how much you all can read into a piece of paint. I mean, a drawing here. That's amazing.
And one thing that I noticed on the leader side, the red figure is actually pointing forward, like they're moving in a forward direction, and everyone is moving in that forward direction. So that kind of stood out to me when I saw this particular graphic.
And the body language of the guy, the manager. Not very good body language.
Absolutely.
I think it comes down to buy-in, where the leader is definitely about buy-in. They're all on the same page. They have that vision. Whereas the manager, you're just doing as you're told. There's not really a buy-in or vision.
Okay. The next slide talks about, in words, the difference between managers versus leaders. If you notice, a manager focuses on things, a leader focuses on people. Managers do things right, and leaders do the right things. Managers plan, leaders inspire. All these things are pretty much what we try to do as leaders. We try to touch the human element. We try to influence and motivate and build so that our legacy lives beyond us, and that our schools and our communities will be able to move forward as far as moving our students toward educational success without our presence. And the second myth about leadership is the entrepreneur myth. Entrepreneurs are skilled at seeing opportunities and going after them, and many people find it necessary to partner up with someone that's skilled at dealing with people. Entrepreneurs can go out and find opportunities and make them work, but they may not be very good people persons. So as leaders, also in our organizations, we always try to work to surround ourselves with people that can take up the things that we're not as skilled at to kind of make up for our shortcomings. If you look at Standard 5 from the principal instrument, it talks about school and community relations. A good entrepreneur is very effective in going into seeking outside resources in the community, making community partnerships, and responding to diverse community interests and needs. So the entrepreneurial side of us is what we need when we're trying to build relationships and community support to help build our schools and move our students forward. The third myth is the knowledge myth, and that speaks to the fact that neither your IQ nor your education equates to leadership. We can be super smart, but if we don't know how to use our knowledge in the proper way and to surround ourselves with the right people and resources, it's really not going to work for us as far as being leaders. But if you think about the knowledge myth and you talk about having the knowledge, standard one, and having a vision, you have to have the knowledge in order to have the insight and the intuition to communicate your vision, establishing goals, setting priorities, to have true school improvement. So the knowledge part of being a leader, you have to have that knowledge to incorporate and utilize the right resources to have that vision to move everyone forward.
And just an aside, when you all get your doctorate degree and you become Dr. whatever, fill in the last name, your ability, your knowledge has increased a little, but your leadership is still something you got to keep working on. So remember, when you get that doctorate in front of your name, you're still the same person. You just got to develop and work on those leadership skills, because just getting that doctorate, it may get you a little bit more pay in North Carolina and South Carolina, but unless you develop the other things that go along with it, it is just a title. There are many, many smart fools out there who have letters behind their name.
Mm-hmm. And the fourth myth of leadership is the pioneer myth. And that talks about being a trendsetter. Doing something first is not always the same as being a leader. To be a leader, a person has to not only be out in the front, but they have to have people intentionally coming behind you and following your lead. In order for people to follow your lead, you have to have, number one, looking at standard 4, you got to have a climate in which collaboration and collegiality has been fostered for people to even want to even listen to or follow up to help you formulate and carry forth your vision. And also looking at standard 7, in order to have a climate that makes the staff feel empowered to be able to help make positive change, you got to have the interpersonal skills to build those relationships to make people want to help you with consensus building and advocating for conflict resolution and all those things that you need to have your organization run efficiently. And the last myth about leadership is the position myth, which I think Dr. Stone kind of just spoke to, because leadership is not based on rank or title. It's the position that makes the leader. It's the leader that makes the position. So it's not your position that makes your leader. It's you and what you bring to that particular title that makes your leader. Standard 9, principles, professional development, kind of makes you really understand what it means to be a true leader, not only because of your title, but Standard 9 talks about your willingness as a principal or any educational professional to continue to seek professional development in order to continue to grow, sharpen that saw, stay on the cutting edge of that learning curve so that you can always continually acquire the strategies that you need to be an effective leader and to help solidify that position by being knowledgeable and being a great leader. Okay, what I wanted to do to kind of sum up all that I've spoken about as far as bringing those myths together is I'm going to show a very short video clip, and it kind of talks about the law of influence and how it transcends across occupations. They're going to be a group of firefighters, that's going to kind of talk about how powerful influence can be and then how paramount it is in being able to lead anyone, regardless of your occupation.
It's different than leadership. It's more exact. It's more surgical. It's used in a measured manner. When you see it happening, most people can recognize it. To affect the behaviors, the actions, the thoughts, and the ideas of others.
You know when you're surrounded by the right people because you see the benefits of those influences and you see how they impact your career and your personal life and how they take you to the next level.
The ability to influence or inspire people is probably the most critical factor of being an effective leader.
It's about relationships. That's the influence piece, and that's how leadership works in my opinion. That's how you get things done.
How you handle certain situations, how you react to certain situations. People are watching those things. The higher up you go, the more people are watching.
You don't display the behavior or display the passion, you're not going to have the ability to influence or inspire people to do the same.
The bottom line is you got to nurture the relationships to have the influence.
You'll never know it all. You'll never see it all. You learn something new every day. But what you do bring to the table, the experience, I think you've got to share that with the younger firefighters.
They have to value what you're trying to impart, and they have to see the benefit to them as an individual or as a group.
If you don't have a relationship with your people and you can't influence them, you're not really leading anybody.
The more you surround yourself with folks that are impacting change in the organization, they're going to help you to be a better influencer as you move forward.
There's never a contract. There's never a verbal agreement. You're never made aware of who's watching you and what they're taking in.
We need to be more like tour guides and say, listen, come on a trip I've been on. Let me show you the past. Let me show you what you need to see. Let me show you what to steer away from.
When it's all said and done and the dust settles and a person comes back to you later on down the road and said, hey, you know, I couldn't have gotten through that without you. And I want you to know how much it meant to me that you stuck with me through that, or you were willing to work with me to get to where I'm at today.
I hope everybody was able to hear that. Does everyone see the screen that says factors that make a leader?
Yes.
Ma'am.
Okay, the video we just watched, of course, pretty much just highlights these factors that are listed here. That it's just interesting how being a firefighter and these people having to put their lives in peril just speaks to what we think about, how we feel as leaders, and the importance of having that influence over the people that we're trying to lead is in being able to make them feel safe and protected and just embraced. And that is how we want our people to feel each and every day, even though we don't get to speak to them and share the things that we're kind of trying to address. This is how we want the people that we're working for to feel each day. Now, the factors that make a leader, kind of to bring us to a close, in order for a person to be a great leader, first of all, you want to know who they are. Relationships, we want to know who they know. Knowledge, what they know. That we got to know that they understand what's going on and have a vision. Another factor that makes a leader is intuition, what they feel. And this is kind of the difference between a manager and a leader. Leaders seek to recognize intangible things such as energy, morale, time, and momentum. These are people that are really, really great at building relationships because they look at all the outside factors that help make people make more sound decisions. Experience, where they've been, people that have experienced challenges in the past, you're more likely to listen to their lead. Their past success, nothing speaks to or follow like a good track record. If I know or feel that you know what you're doing, then I feel like you're going to be able to lead me in the right direction. And then finally, a factor that makes a leader is their ability, what they can do. We want people that are capable of trying to move us forward and doing what they actually have set out to do. Kind of in conclusion, I brought back the collage of the same leaders that we started with, Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, Lincoln, Margaret Thatcher, and so on. And kind of what I wanted to say was just looking at those factors that make great leaders, like character and ability, those kinds of things. These things that these people possess is what drew us to their leadership style. Although they really possessed many of these factors, there were specific traits that they had that led us to looking at them and wanting to live by their example. This is a quote that Martin Luther King pretty much lived by. The function of education is to teach one to think intensely and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that's the goal of true education. Now, what leadership factor, and I know I went over those kind of quickly, what does that kind of speak to? Is that his character, his ability, knowledge, experience? What, just looking at that particular quote, what do you think that kind of speaks to?
Keisha, I think he speaks to all 7 of them.
Yeah, he does.
I think that right there is intelligence and character.
Right.
Pretty strong.
And that's what I thought too. I think, and just as it was very difficult to narrow it down to one with Martin Luther King, and then with all of them actually. But character is one that we all look to him for the inner depth of his character. So that's why he was so we were so drawn to his leadership style. Okay, let's look at could someone read Mother Teresa's quote and then see what leadership factor you think that might speak to? Like, is it a relationship, intuition, experience, or so on?
I'll read it. Do not wait for leaders. Do it alone, person to person. Be faithful in small things, because it is in them that your strength lies. And I'm just going to go ahead and answer. I think that that's totally character.
Okay, I think so too. I really do. And then, I was looking at when it says person to person and do not wait for leaders, do it alone. I think also she's kind of, there's another one that you think she's kind of trying to speak to when she is trying to gain her followers. She's appealing to their sense of self and their feelings. So what kind of intangible thing is that? Does anyone remember from the leadership factors we discussed?
I think it poses her ability to do what she can do and lead all those masses of people.
Okay.
So she's a leader and she's capable of making sure it gets done.
Okay. So she used intuition too. Mother Teresa was very well respected. Whenever she talked, regardless of whether she offended you or not, you tended to listen because of her religious background and just from how she spoke to the heart. And finally, Nelson Mandela, his quote, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." Nelson Mandela was admired for how he overcame challenges. So what leadership factor do you think that kind of speaks to? His experience? Experience. Exactly. We looked at, he always, no matter what type of oppression he faced, he always stood courageously and always spoke against being nonviolent in your reactions. So looking at his experiences, we always felt that he was a great leader because what he's gone through and teaching us to move forward with having faith and trying to, in the face of oppression, we really looked up to that. In closing, Which leadership styles speak to your strengths, and which do you need to optimize to become a more well-rounded, effective leader? That is something that Maxwell left us with at the end of the chapter. He wants you to think about what styles are you're stronger in, and then how can you optimize the other things to make you more well-rounded. Some of us know that we're great at building relationships, and we've had great past experiences, but how well are we at reading feelings and taking advantage of the timing of what we're doing and how to pull people on board, even when what we're doing is not always popular. Those are the things that I think Dr. Stone is telling us each time we get an opportunity to self-reflect so that we can try to draw strengths from all the different styles of leadership that we're going to be that we'll be exposed to throughout our journey in this program. And it's important because having a little bit of all of it is important in being a great leader. And finally, the quote that Maxwell leaves us with in this chapter: if you can't influence people, then they will not follow you. And if people won't follow you, you are not a leader. The test of leadership: turn around, and if anyone is following you, then you're a leader. And that is the end of chapter 2, Law of Influence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Suzanne, if you will stop sharing. Suzanne, you're up.
All right. Technology doesn't always respect me, but I will give it a shot here. Okay. Okay, so can everyone see that?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk now about Chapter 3, the Law of Process. The Law of Process was actually first introduced in Chapter 1. We saw that with Matt, and it's something actually that Steve just mentioned just a few minutes ago, that, you know, this is something that leadership develops daily, not in a day, is what Maxwell says. So you're not going to wake up one morning after after you receive your EDD and you're suddenly a leader. He begins this chapter with a story, and he tells the story of a woman named Ann Schreiber, and she died at the age of 101. She had been an IRS auditor for years and years and years, and by all accounts, she was horribly mistreated in her job. She wasn't given raises when she should have been. She wasn't promoted. A lot of it was because of her gender, obviously, at the time. But when she retired in 1943, she received a very modest pension of $3,150, and she didn't trust stockbrokers, but she did want to invest. So she took that entire pot of money and she invested in the stock market on her own. And for the next many, many, many years, she lived a quiet life. She lived in a $400 a month rent-controlled apartment until she died in 1995. When she died, people, started looking at how she lived. She was very frugal. She didn't replace her furniture when it needed to be replaced. People never saw her spending money on herself. They thought that she was just really poor, but they didn't realize that over the years, she had been taking that money that she had invested and she would reinvest it and reinvest it. And when the stock market took a bit of a dive, she kept her money in there. She didn't pull it out. She knew that she was investing over time. She was living the law of process. So at her death, when they read her will, she bequeathed $22 million to Yeshiva University when she died. This is a university she didn't even attend. So it was quite a shock to everyone. So by using the law of process, Ann Schreiber turned this modest pension into quite a lot of wealth. And she did that over a long period of time. And she had to use a lot of patience and perseverance. Maxwell says that leadership is like investing, it compounds. And he quotes a friend of his named Tag Short when he says, the secret of our success is in our daily agenda. In other words, what you prioritize in your life will show up in your daily agenda. Those are the things that you value. And what you want to see in that agenda is growth over time. So you look at what's in your agenda, all kinds of things. You probably have appointments. You have symbols of relationships with other people. You see the things that you're passionate about, if you tend to go to a lot of concerts or something. You see the things that you're personally disciplined about. Do you go to the gym regularly? Is that in your agenda? And Maxwell states that the ability to lead is really a collection of skills, nearly all of which can be learned and improved. And this is one of those skills that you can learn and improve on. So looking at what's in your agenda, what you value and what you prioritize, and then over time building those things and improving on them. So for example, if I were to take a look at my personal agenda, I would see a lot of information about like appointments involving my children, who by the way are both grown, travel time for my husband, things that my family are going to do together. So one of the things I clearly prioritize is the health and well-being of my family as a unit. So a question I have for you guys is, think about some of the things that I would see if I took a look at your personal agenda, and what do those individual appointments, etc., say about you as a whole? Anybody?
I think if you look if you looked at my agenda, you would see I set aside time to just read for pleasure, to read. Now I don't know what that says, but that's just a part of what I value and what is a part of my life, reading.
I think it depends on what you're reading. If you're reading leadership books, aren't you trying to grow and learn?
A combination, trash and professional.
Everyone needs escape.
And sadly for me, a lot of my calendar would be my job and my work, and then my daughter is are my major schedule things on my schedule.
So then I would say that you value what you do. It's part of who you are, and you value you as a mom, right? Okay. All right. So his next little subtopic was that leaders are learners. And there you go, Steve. If you're reading some of those books, you're probably always learning. He quotes Warren Bennis and Bert Nanus when they say it is the capacity to develop and improve their skills that distinguishes leaders from their followers. And it's not that that followers aren't necessarily improving skills and developing their skills. It's just that leaders are intentional about doing so. So you should constantly, as a leader, be growing and stretching yourself. You should be reading journals and books on leadership. You should be sharing those readings with other people. When you have your little powwow with your admin team at work, for instance, maybe bring an article that you have recently read. Angela, I think you were the one who mentioned, it may have been even in your discussion board post, that you shared the irreplaceables with somebody at HR. I took the same article to my boss because we're looking at doing some smart retention right now as well, because that article really spoke to me. And so we're going to use it as an admin team. And that's going to help develop all of our skills as leaders. So Maxwell says that what most people do, and this is where you start to see that the law of process is something that's really, it sounds easy, it's very challenging. Because most people tend to overestimate the importance of events and they underestimate the power of processes. And, here's what he means by that. Hold on. Okay, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you're gonna see what events tend to do, okay? And if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see what processes tend to do. So events are those things that kind of happen on the day. They may have a plan leading up to them, but they happen on the day and then they're done. Processes are things that, you grow with, you start with a plan, the plan may change over time, but there's never really quite an end to a process. A process continues. It is a journey. So events are things that they might encourage decisions because it happens and all of a sudden you say, we've got to do something about this. An example of that would be when Hurricane Katrina hit and suddenly everybody said, we better shore up these levees. Whereas a process encourages development. I like this one right here where he says that events challenge people because in the moment, think about a bomb threat, okay? In the moment, you're having to deal with that, but then it's going to be over. But a process changes people. Events are easy. You may not feel that in the moment, but processes are difficult. And they should be because they're what are growing you. So a little time for you guys to think, and I have a couple of examples for you to think about. I have some educational events and educational processes I want to think about. So an example of an event in the educational world would be receiving an award. So you were selected Teacher of the Month, okay? But an educational process that helps to grow a teacher would be the National Board Certification process. It goes over time and it tends to change people. Another educational event is an end-of-year evaluation. Okay, you sit down one time, you might have a new principal next year, you find out what your ratings are. Those ratings might change next year depending on whether the vision has changed, etc. But an educational process would be a PDP. So it's your professional development plan, those things that setting goals, having strategies to meet those goals, and taking those goals into the next year to continue to grow. So with those examples, can anybody think of any other examples that we might have from the education world that would be an event or a process?
I'm gonna go with an educational event can be just your like MTSS, PBIS, a single event, and a whole process would be to implement the MTSS.
Okay.
Okay. So you may have a daily celebration for students that attain the honor roll as an event. The whole process would be to implement tiers 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
An educational event could be an actual graduation ceremony from either high school, a master's program, a doctoral program, the actual graduation ceremony itself. But the educational process would be going through the doctoral program or the master's program, all the learning opportunities and the classes that you take to gain the knowledge to be able to finally get to that graduation ceremony at the end.
Right. So basically what you should be seeing there is when we mention that event, that graduation, that one-day celebration, that one-time receiving an award, that's a one-day event, okay? And it doesn't necessarily change someone. You might feel proud of yourself, but it doesn't necessarily change the way you think and develop you over time. Whereas those processes, the program we're going through right now, creating a plan for development, those things grow and strengthen people. So educational events or any type of event, they inspire us to take a step forward. So they happen and we think, we should do something now. Whereas a process inspires us to make an improvement. We don't just necessarily want to do something, we want to grow something. And he talks about the 5 phases of leadership growth, and this is the process. This is the actual law of process. And he begins with phase 1, where he says, I don't know what I don't know. And there are 2 ways of looking at this phase. It's either that you literally don't know what you don't know. And if you're familiar with BTs, you know what I'm talking about. You go into a classroom as a BT and you literally don't know what all is going to come at you. You have no idea. When you think of it in the leadership world, it's that you don't really know what skills you already possess and how to grow them. Or it could be the time that you're put in charge of something and you turn around and no one's following you. Phase 2 is, I know that I need to know. So it's when you suddenly begin to realize you're in a leadership role and you're becoming conscious that you have some skills, but in order to get better or in order to grow followers, you're going to have to improve upon the skills that you already have. He quotes Benjamin Disraeli when he said, to be conscious that you are ignorant of the facts is a great step to knowledge. So it's that realization that you don't know it all, but you know that you don't know it. Phase 3 is I know what I don't know. This is the phase right in the middle, and I kind of think of it as the top of sort of a pyramid that you begin to realize that you're going to need to create a plan. You're going to have a plan for personal growth, and you're going to need to take the beginning steps to make that plan happen. Phase 4 is, and I like his play on words here, I know and grow, and it starts to show. So this is where you've begun to develop those leadership skills. People are following you. You seem to have a shared vision with people. You're working your plan. You're expanding your knowledge over time, but you still recognize that it's an ongoing process and you have to be deliberate about it. When you hit phase 5, he says I simply go because of what I know. It's almost that all of that practice that you've done in the first 4 phases becomes natural. It becomes automatic. You're still doing it, but you're doing it without having to be so deliberate about doing it. It becomes instinctual for you. So Maxwell is quick to point out that you are not necessarily only on one phase of the law of process in all aspects of your life. When I think about my personal life, when I think about my professional life, there are times when I find myself squarely in phase 4. I know that I'm doing what I need to be doing. People are following me. I still have to work it. I'm still growing. I'm working the plan. I go back to the plan. I'm deliberate about it. But then there are other aspects of my life and my career where I know I'm back in like phase 2 still, you know. And I talked to my boss about that today in my mid-year review. So does anyone have, you know, anything they want to say about which phase you sometimes find yourself in? Have you had something occur recently at work or in your personal life where you said, I suddenly realized that right now I'm in phase whatever of the law of process?
Well, Suzanne, I think one thing too, you can always remember too, excuse me, is that in all of your actions and interactions, you're going to be at different phases for in each and every one of them. So
that's right.
Your personal life, when you deal with a personal crisis or something, you're in one phase, but turn around the next day, you can be completely in another. So this is a very fluid chart.
It is.
And and to get to phase 5 is something that's a lofty goal, and it's going to be very difficult to get there.
Well, and even John Maxwell says right in his book when he's discussing these phases that he was in his 50s before he really felt like he was in phase 5, in what he did. And this is something he does every single day. He teaches classes on this. He does presentations on this. So, yeah. So he gives us a couple of examples that leadership happens daily, not in a day. He talks about Larry Bird. He says, when Larry Bird was growing up and he wanted to be this great basketball player, he knew that he was going to win with free throws. So he would get up every single morning and he would throw 500 free throws every morning because he knew he needed that consistency. He needed to develop his muscle memory in order to make it happen. He also speaks about Demosthenes of ancient Greece. He was a great orator. He was born with a horrible speech impediment, but he had a gift and he knew it. He just needed to get past that. So every day he would go out by the seashore. He knew he needed to learn how to project his voice. He would fill his mouth with pebbles, and he would speak over the sound of the crashing waves with these pebbles in his mouth until he learned how to get past his speech impediment, and he learned how to project his voice for crowds. And, by all accounts, he became an incredible orator because of that. So both of these examples show us that if we want to lead, if this is something that's important to us, then it's something that we're going to have to work on every day. He says, Maxwell does, champions don't become champions in the ring. They are merely recognized there. That you have to kind of look at the daily routine of great leaders and great champions and watch that on a daily basis, they are persistently and consistently doing things that make them great leaders and great champions. He speaks about Joe Frazier, who even said, hey, when I go in that boxing ring, it's all about relying on reflexes once the action starts. Because once that action starts, I'm not in control of everything that's going to happen, but I am in control of how I prepare for it. He likes to talk about Teddy Roosevelt, and I don't mind that at all. He begins by saying that the image we have of Teddy Roosevelt as a president is a stark contrast to how he was as a very young man. He was born very frail. He was born sickly. He had horrible eyesight. His parents didn't even think he was going to live. But he was smart, and he liked to read a lot. And his father once said to him this quotation, which I think is hilarious: "You have the mind, but you have not the body. And without the help of the body, the mind cannot go as far as it should. You must make the body." And Teddy Roosevelt heard that, and he decided he was going to make it happen. So he began to exercise. He lifted weights. He ran. He built this body that would help his mind go where it needed to go. And he had continual growth. He continued to exercise all of his life. There are these incredible stories of him boxing, and we know that he was in the Spanish-American War. He was very well educated. He wound up going to law school, and he was at one point the commissioner of police in New York City. He was constantly reading. As a matter of fact, when he died, and he died in his sleep, they found a book under his pillow. And Vice President Marshall at the time said death had to take him sleeping, for if Roosevelt had been awake, there would have been a fight. And so Teddy Roosevelt, as a man of action, he grew. He had a process. His father started him on that action, and he started from that moment growing and just improving himself over time, and he never stopped, even on his deathbed. He says, he ends by saying that leadership can be learned. You know, it's not something that you're just always naturally born with. Don't think that it has to be. You have to persevere, you have to stay dedicated, and that it takes a lifetime. And I'm going to hope that this very short video clip is able to be heard by all of you, but I'm going to let John Maxwell himself kind of sum up this chapter for you. I like the analogy that he uses in this video clip. He doesn't use this analogy in the book, and you'll have to kind of giggle at the beginning of it, because every time I play it in the house, my husband and my son start giggling. So let's see if this works. Can y'all hear it?
No.
No?
We're still on the screen.
You're still on the screen? Okay.
Is there another slide to go to?
Hold on. I know what I can do. No, it should have gone right from there. So I'm going to try something. Well, that's not going to work. Okay. I'll just go ahead and tell you what he says, and then I'll copy and paste. It's like a 1-minute video. But the analogy that he uses here in this video is that people often, leaders will send their managers, etc., to him at his conferences that he has, and he's very famous for the conferences that he has, expecting to send them there, and in one day they're going to become a leader. So he refers to that as microwave leadership. That you're going to put somebody in a microwave and zap them, and they're going to come out a leader. And he says that's not how it works. When we utilize the law of process and we understand the law of process, what we realize is that leaders have to simmer. They have to marinate. And he says we need to start crock-potting our leaders. So I like that analogy as far as applying the law of process. It's something that you have to have patience with. You can't stop midstream. You have to, you know, keep going after it if this is important to you. For some personal insights for me, after reading this chapter, I know that there are times when I need to identify that I'm not necessarily resting securely. I'm okay with phase 4, to be honest with you. I'm okay with constantly growing, but to me, that's my aim. That's my goal, is to be in phase 4 at this point in my life, and I need to work intentionally to get there. Also, as a personal insight, to me, out of all the 21 laws, this is one way up there on the scale that would be really easy to fail at, because it takes constant dedication. It's not something that you can work and then it just starts happening. It's something that you will have to do for the rest of your life. Leadership takeaways. It can take the span of an entire career or longer to reach phase 5. John Maxwell says that about himself. He talks about Teddy Roosevelt and these other leaders who have done the same thing. That leaders look for opportunities to improve every single day. Leaders are never complacent. Good enough is never good enough for a leader. And there may be aspects of a leader's life in which he is on different phases of the process than others. And just like you just said, Steve, that's okay. It really should be that way. The knowledge that we are in a different phase and that we need to grow is probably more important than always being at phase 4. There's my reference, and that's it. So, anyone have any questions?
Great job. All right, Hope, you're up. Hope, you're on mute.
Wait a minute. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. All right. So the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell. I am doing chapter 4, the law of navigation. He starts this chapter comparing 2 explorers with 2 different leadership styles. One, I don't know how to pronounce the name, but we're going to try this. Roald Amundsen.
Sounds good to me.
There you go. So he studied the course that he wanted himself and his team to take. He set up, he knew exactly what he was going to do about equipment and made sure that it was very well for his team. He knew where his stops would be throughout his trip to make sure they had supplies and food. He selected the best equipment for his team. He did not depend on devices to get him there. He selected dog sleds, and he made sure he had dog trainers on his team. He made sure that they only went for about 6 hours a day, trying to cover 15 to 20 miles in a day to protect his team. So it was well charted. And then on the other hand, you have Robert Falcon Scott, who might not have put in as much attention as Roald did. He very poor planning. The clothing he selected for his team was of poor design. So his team was faced with frostbite, dehydration, low food supply, and ultimately, due to his lack of being able to apply the law of navigation, it led to death. Maxwell said in this story that he had courage, but not leadership. And then, so we're often faced with the idea that we have courage and that we're able to implement certain changes within our school or even our personal life and still be faced with the improper tools to do it because we did not put in enough beforehand work. All right, so in observation in your school or in your district, who are the top navigators and how would their leadership skills benefit your school or district? Anybody want to share?
It'll be your school board, your superintendent, the principals.
So let's just take the school board, for example. How do you feel that those that serve on your school board, their leadership skill impacting that district?
If they're focused on policy and strictly focused on policy and they're not micromanaging, say, superintendents or micromanaging the day-to-day operation, then they're kind of staying in their specific role, and therefore they're doing the will of the people. So in a sense, they're not coming below the line, so to speak. Once they come below the line and they start to kind of meddle in that day-to-day operation, the boards are not as effective. And so their leadership role is just of establishing those policies, making sure those policies stay in place, and when necessary, voting the will of the people.
And I think when you look at your school board, it's going to look very different to you depending on the size of your district. So I learned coming from Cumberland County, which is a sizable district, that I knew the board members near us, but I didn't know the rest of them. But I've since worked in 2 small districts where we had very hands-on board members. If we had a professional development day, our board members showed up. They came, they sat through professional development, they participated, so they modeled for the teachers and the administrators in our buildings that, that this is a valuable thing and that we should all think that it's valuable. So that connection to them is really, really seen when you have sort of a more hands-on board in that way. Now, I know that there can be some hands-on boards that aren't as positive as my experience, but those have been my positive experiences.
I remember in past chapters, maybe Craig and Levette mentioned micromanagers, i.e. on the principal level. How would that leadership skill benefit the organization, being micromanagers? Benefit, of course, it may have a negative connotation to it, but how could it possibly benefit your school?
Hope, the only time I could think of that micromanaging would benefit a school is when maybe a principal who's a micromanager comes into a situation where change needs to happen and things need to get done because they haven't been getting done. And he has to work to restructure, but at the same time, things still need to get done. So if he micromanages and makes sure that things get done at the same time he's restructuring, I can see that there would be a benefit there because children would still be learning, etc. It's not something I can see would have long-term benefits.
And it can also, in moderation, help with some accountability, because and kind of as to add to that, if you see that an organization needs that accountability because people aren't holding up their end of the bargain, that micromanager will, people know that that person is going to check behind them. And so, but I think that's in bits and pieces where necessary, but it could put that accountability piece as, oh, I need to get this done because I know that there's going to be an expectation that is followed and somebody's going to be checking up on me.
And to piggyback off of that, I would just say micromanager leaders could benefit the organization in trying to train those APs or teachers that they are giving tasks to and checking up on, trying to train them in becoming the leader that they possibly, that they see that they can possibly have. All right. Moving on. So in this part of the chapter, as I was reading, navigators see the trip ahead. You should control your direction. It's better to control your direction. To not control it, you would be controlled by it. It goes back to, I think, chapter 2, Lakeisha, where she talks about the manager versus the leader, reactive versus proactive, where we saw the leader, where he was pointing. Clearly, you could see he had a vision, a destination in mind, and understood that it would take a team to get them there. And then the quote, which I can't see because you all's faces are covering up that part of my screen. The 4 good leaders take their people on a journey. They go through a process in order to give the trip the best chance of being a success. So mentally thinking through all those possibilities before actually and doing research before actually implementing something different. So there's 4 parts to navigators. Navigators draw on past experiences. Navigators examine the conditions before making commitments. Navigators learn to what others have to say. Navigators make sure their conclusions represents both faith and fact. So for drawing on past experiences, successes give you confidence. And that's what Maxwell talks about in the book. And he, it lets you know that you're capable of reaching a success whenever you're able to live through any of those successes. And then failures, however, teach you a greater lesson to learn from, because it reveals something that you may not have within yourself. Character flaws, errors in judgment. Myself, I have a hard time making decisions because I hate failing. So if I make the wrong decision, I feel like I failed at something, but that's the best learning process, is to fail. And you know the saying, if you plan to fail, you fail to plan. Also, drawn from past experiences give you that opportune time to do reflective thinking. Navigators examine the conditions before making commitments. So that reminds me of the listening tour that in our face-to-face, Lavette and Melody talked about the new superintendent in Cumberland County doing, and just knowing the current conditions, what you are walking into. Navigators listen to what others have to say. Leaders will not always have the answer, and that's something also that Maxwell harps on. So it's very important that you gather information, that you listen to other members in your team, that you talk to people in your organization, and you make it about teamwork. And then the 4th step that navigators go through, they make sure their conclusion represents both faith and fact. I know as leaders, we have a hard time balancing both faith and fact. But Maxwell says that you have to have both in order to make those sound decisions. And that leads me into my next question. Oops. Do you believe all 4 steps in the navigation process is necessary? Why or why not? Anybody?
Can you go back one so I can see the steps?
Maybe.
I think they are necessary. And you touched on our new superintendent, and he is very new. I think he's been here 5 months or so. But just thinking about his process with our strategic plan, he's kind of going through these steps, which is helping to build that trust, that he is, not just coming in to make rash decisions, but he's getting the feedback, and being very reflective upon this course that we're beginning to take. So I think that you have to have all of those pieces, so that you can see a complete picture in totality. So I would say yes.
And I'm going to agree. I think every single one, as a matter of fact, I would agree so much that I think that if you're missing one of those 4 steps, that you're going to have a serious problem in your plan.
I would say that, as superintendents come in and you talk about that 30-day, 60-day, 90-day plan, that this is all a part of that plan, navigating, understanding what's happened during the past, but also examining things very closely, looking at facts, but listening to what others have to say before you move forward, not speaking so quickly on things, but unless there are some things you're going to have to speak on, but not speaking so quickly on certain things until you get all the facts and then move forward.
And I also want to add to that too, Hope. I think all 4 are absolutely essential. And I think if you're weak on one, it's going to hurt your plan. I think you can still move forward as long as you recognize that, hey, this is a weakness of mine and you've got to make an outreach. I mean, this is a learning curve that all of us are going to come short on sometimes on some of these. But to the point that everyone here has made, all 4 of these factors are necessary. And if you don't, and one of the worst things I think you can have in a superintendent or in a new principal or in a new leader that you have to follow is someone who comes in who doesn't respect the culture and the history and who doesn't take time to understand how you got to where you are. Because if you don't do that and you come in, and I've seen many of superintendents do this, I've seen many of principals do this, they come in and they've got my agenda. And my agenda is, it doesn't respect the collectiveness of everyone who's been there before. Now, yeah, they may need some modification, they may need some changing, but you still have got to go in with respect for who's there. And then you've got to lead them toward where you want them to be. You can't go in and whip them there. And you certainly can't whip them there in a year. And like Lavette said, you're going to inherit people that you had no choice over. And oftentimes, the central office is going to send you people that you don't want, that you have no choice over. So you're going to have to learn to navigate with those folks as well. So again, it's a combination of all 4 of them. Being weak in one, as long as you know you're weak in it and you got skills to build on it, I think that's the important thing. So yeah, go ahead, Hope. I'm sorry. And we are, by the way, folks, we are probably pushing, and Hope, I hate to do this to you, but we're probably pushing about another 10 minutes. And we are going to wrap up tonight. So if that's okay with you, Craig, and you, Melody, we will let you present at our face-to-face session. Is that okay? Because you all started on time. I respect that. I respect your time. I know you've had long days. So Hope, if you can maybe wrap up in about 5 to 10 more minutes, then we'll have a quick little goodbye, and then we'll see each other on the March date. Melody, Craig, you're okay with that plan to do it?
Yes, sir. I'm fine.
Thank you.
The next part of the chapter, Maxwell talks about him building a larger church for his growing congregation, and he talks about charting the course with the navigation strategy. So before he even mentioned it to the congregation, he made this plan. He researched, he talked to key personnel that he needed to talk to. He came up with this process here on the slide. Predetermine a course of action. Sorry. Oops. That. Predetermine a course of action, lay out your goals, adjust your priorities, notify key personnel, allow time for acceptance, head into action, expect problems, always point to the success, daily review your plan. So whenever charting change, prepare for major barriers to successful planning. Many people will fear change and the uncertainty. Continually put the vision in front of them. Always report good news and celebrate successes. And then he says in the book, law of navigation is preparation. Prepare well, you convey confidence and trust. And I'm sorry if you all are getting these messages popped up. All right, so my last couple of slides actually is just discussion questions, so I'm not sure how fast, Dr. Stone, you want me to.
I want someone who hasn't spoken all night to do one, and then we'll do one per slide.
Okay. So application, you probably saw these questions at the end of the chapter on page 46. Do you make it a regular practice to reflect on positive and negative experiences?
I'll take that one. I think I try at the end of every single day to make it a practice to just reflect on like what happened today, process what happened, like what leadership I did do well, and then what experiences can I learn from at the end of the day. So, and I typically do that right after school and then right before I go to sleep.
Hey, Matt, do you involve anyone else in that discussion, or is that just you?
Oh, no. I talk to my mom every single day. So every single day I get off, I call my mom, and because she has more experience than I have. So every single day we talk, we reflect. She's very honest with me, so she doesn't mind critiquing me, and she'll just let me know, like, hey, this is something you could have done better. And then I'll just try to build upon those skills later on. I also talk to my dad. So me and my dad talk like every other day, and then we always meet for dinner. So then we'll go through all that. So, yeah.
And for those of you who don't know Matt's mom, she was an institution in public schools for a long, long time. Great woman. All right, next slide and next question.
Which way do you naturally lean, toward facts or faith?
Come on, Crystal. Haven't heard you much tonight. You get this one, Crystal.
Typically, I lean towards facts because I guess maybe it's the science mind in me. Faith sometimes is a feeling, and sometimes you can have a wrong feeling. But when you take facts to someone, they're more apt to believe it.
Good point. Next.
Right, and then I believe, I don't remember whose chapter, but he spoke on being lifelong learners, continual reading, and these are some of the books in this chapter that he pointed to. So I'm thinking they would be some awesome reads.
I think they would. All right, thank you, Hope. Any questions for Hope? Well, I've got about one more minute. Hope, if you'll quit sharing. So I want to call you back. I'm not going to go anywhere other than just to remind you that we are meeting. We are off for 2 weeks. I'm going to miss you for the next 2 weeks. I will deal with it. I know you'll deal with it too. But I will see you back on March the 2nd. We're going to start at 8:30. And then we're going to go to about 3:30. And we're going to have the 2 presentations. And then we've got a full day schedule. We're going to delve into a lot of some interesting things, which I hope you'll like. Same place, 8:30. Sunday, we're going to do it again at 8:30. Melody is going to bring us our quick little, about a 5 to 10 minute kickoff invocation. And then after that, we have 4 more Zoom sessions. So you guys did great. You joined me on time, and I really appreciate time. I value it. So we will end on time.
Hey, Steve, can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Is there anyone in the group who does not eat pork? Everyone eats pork? Okay, I've got breakfast. I've got breakfast on Saturday.
Bacon, honey, bring me the bacon.
Okay, I'll bring breakfast on Saturday.
Oh, good for you. Thank you. All right, so, we'll see you. Have a great week. Everybody, you did a great job tonight. Go ahead and post those PowerPoint presentations so I can begin to grade them. Everybody have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
I'll stick around in case anybody wants to stay, but goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.